What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys so much. Those of you guys who've been rocking with your boy. This is the Weird Perspective off-season edition. This is episode number 12. So we did 12 episodes of season 1, 12 episodes of the off-season, and I'm hoping we can get about 12 to 15 of season 2 when it drops. But for right now, listen, I got a special guest joining you. I know y'all probably like, man, you say that every time, but I do. All my guests that come on here, they're special, and I love them. All of them. Appreciate it. And today is no different. I have a young man that is truly a friend. He is an inspiring man. He's creative. He does so many things. He's actually part of the Weird Perspective family, like for real. None of this would be able to take place if it wasn't for him. He's helped me. I had a vision, and he helped put that vision together. This is somebody who I look at as a little brother. And I got a lot of love and respect for this guy. So I want you guys to welcome to the channel my little brother in Christ, my friend. I'm pretty sure he got his own master plan, but y'all put y'all hands together and welcome Adam Hansen to the channel.
What's up, everybody? How you guys doing? It's totally weird doing this over recording because it's like there's no one here, you know.
Yeah, I know. But
It's
if
cool.
I had the air horns, I would have let the air horns fly.
Always
And,
with the air horns with you, man. Every
I
single
think-
time. You're
Hey,
like
I'm
air
34,
horns.
bro. We came up on air horns. That's what it was. If you ain't get no air horns, like
I'll
it wasn't.
give you
popping.
an air horn.
I need one. We're gonna use Ecamm Live moving forward, so they
Yeah,
got the air horn built inside. So
cool. Sips tea.
all right. So for those of y'all wondering, why do I have Adam on the channel today? We're gonna talk about something that is serious, something that has affected so many kids across the world. This D word that a lot of people hate to mention, and it's divorce. There's so many families that go through divorces, and shockingly, I found out a lot of parents think that the children are not affected by divorce. They think like, oh, they'll be okay. We're still going to be, co-parenting and making it happen. But man, there's a lot of things that goes into that, and it really, affects the kids. And so today we're going to talk about that with Adam. Now, Adam is, I hate to say, a product of a divorce, right? His mom and his dad went through a divorce, and I want to get his take and his experience and how he's overcome or how he's dealing with the effects of that divorce. How did it affect his life? So he's going to share his story with us today. And so I just want to say thank you for being transparent
problem.
and willing and open to share this story. I'm pretty sure that it could be, some of these things are probably triggering and they're tough
Yeah.
to talk about. And so again, man, I just want to thank you for being available and being willing to do this. And so before we dive into your story, your background, I always like to ask like a fun question. With this being like the final episode of the off season,
Oh no.
I want to ask like just some little fun little questions, man, before we dive into such a heavy topic. And so I didn't give you any type of warning. So those of you guys watching, Adam doesn't know what this question is, so he got to literally answer this off the cuff, right? And so it's kind of a fun little question that I've been asking people for like the last week and a half. So it goes, if you were stuck on an island,
Oh no.
you take one book, one album, and one movie that you will have with you forever. You're stuck on an island. What would they be and why?
One of each.
Yeah. So one book, one movie, and one album. What would it
One
be?
book, one movie, one album. The album that I'd probably take is this one right here. This is Carrie Job's The Garden.
Uh-oh.
Fantastic vinyl. I probably wouldn't be able to play it, but if it's a good album.
If you find something that could spin, you might have to invent it and find something that could spin it. Then you put like a little stick and drop it on there.
I'm smart enough. I figure it out.
I
some
think you
way,
can figure it
somehow.
out.
Probably not. An album. Oh, that'd be the album. The book. I don't know, man. I don't really. The funny thing is, I don't really like reading, even though I'm a writer. I know that's kind of like contradictory, but probably any book that I don't like, so that I could use it as toilet paper if I need it. You know what I'm saying? So
Whoa.
gotta do what you gotta do. I ain't
That's
about to
how,
use no leaves or nothing. So, and then one movie, I would probably, man, there's a lot of great ones. There's one that's kind of a sleeper, called The Judge with Robert Downey Jr. and Robert Duvall.
okay.
Fantastic movie.
Okay.
Have you seen it before?
No, I heard
No.
about it, but I
It's a
haven't
great
seen it.
movie. I've seen it maybe like a few dozen times already, since it's been out. So it's a
Mm,
comfort movie at this point. I'm definitely gonna need it if I'm stuck on an island to comfort me.
cool. 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 I have another question, but I'll save it for later.
No, no,
So you get let the anticipation build up. We'll
double
save it for
whammy.
the end of the episode. But
All right.
man, diving into this thing, man, I want you to just share with us a little bit about yourself, man. Your uh early childhood, how when you were born, what was your family like, man? Like siblings, mom, dad. Give us a quick little preview into your childhood and how it was.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that's kind of hard to give. And the only reason why that is because my parents separated when I was 8. So
Mm,
anything before that is kind of like hard to recollect. I do remember like us being as like us kids being somewhat closer. Vaguely, I remember that. Um, we were definitely happy because mom and dad were there for sure. It was a lot of like it was a lot less confusion like for real. Um, I remember like a lot of Christmases and stuff like that. We would open presents upstairs, maybe in Christmas Eve because my mom is Hispanic, and then Christmas morning we would go downstairs to my grandparents' house. We would open presents down there, so there was like that kind of a deal. We would all be like Thanksgiving was all together. We didn't have to worry about going to this house and that house and then another house. It was all like together. And yeah, I don't know. I do remember like a lot of fighting, so I guess there was already turmoil from like a very young age, but I didn't think that it was that bad.
mm.
Because there's turmoil in every household, everybody's
Right,
gonna
right. As
fight, everybody's
always,
gonna have
families gonna
disagreements.
fight, man.
Yeah.
Disagreements. Yeah.
Enough people living in one house, everyone has their own point of view, their own thought pattern, like people are gonna clash. And then that's pretty much all that I can think of in terms of like our family dynamic and how things ran. It was simple. There was no confusion. It was very straightforward. Here's what's going to happen, and then it happened.
Mm, mm. Was your mom and your dad like very active in your childhood as far as you can remember?
From before the divorce.
Yeah,
I mean,
before.
yeah, I would say that they were pretty active as far as I can remember. I do remember times like seeing mom and dad being like in love and loving one another and
Mm,
like being that kind of having that kind of relationship. So I mean, the more that I'm thinking about it too, like just more memories keep popping up. But um, yeah, I mean, it was nice. It was simple. It was how it was meant to be.
mm. How many siblings you got?
So I have two older brothers, and then one younger sister, as you know. But for people who don't,
Right, right. Yeah, I know.
yeah,
I have a very long history with the Hansen family.
yeah,
Quick little background of me and Adam's relationship. So we met in 2011 when I started going to the church that he was already part of as a kid.
hmm
Became friends with his brother. We served in youth ministry, his oldest brother. Shout outs to Anthony. Um, and then he was part of those those youth groups coming as a
Yeah.
kid.
Oh man,
I still got some videos, some pictures
you
of some
needed to
things.
delete them Johns real
I'm
quick,
gonna
bro.
keep
Throw them
them
in there.
joints. Um,
Pits of hell. Throw them there. Let them burn, baby, burn.
and so yeah, I got a long history. Like I said, we met in 2011 at church, and I
Yeah.
started serving a youth group, and you were coming to that youth group faithfully as a kid, and just the camping trip, the whole nine. So
Mhm.
um, we quickly became friends with Adam, and then was kind of plugged into your family. Your dad was at that time he was over the marriage ministry, or he was at least one of the leaders in the marriage ministry. He conducted a couple of like the small groups
Yeah.
that me and my wife went to as part of our like premarital counseling. So it was some good stuff. So I was able to connect with your dad and have some real conversations with him. And so man, my experience with you and your family has been a positive one.
Mhm.
Me and your dad had some really like deep conversations.
Some
Um,
moments.
yeah, we've had some moments. He's no, he said he spoke a lot of wisdom into my life during that time, and I can remember very clearly like lessons about marriage and what it means to be a husband from your dad and from Phil as well. Phil was
Mhm.
a lot more hands on with me, but just going to those small groups, going through those books. We went through like Love and Respects.
Mhm.
I think I did that with Phil and Tasha, but your dad
Shout
did
out
like
Phil one
Sex
time.
Love. Yeah, shout outs to Phil and Tasha. I need to have them on. Like we have
Yeah.
so many things we need to talk about with marriage.
Phil especially, that man can play the keyboard like no other.
Just have
No
them on, just playing the keyboard or talking
or
and
just
playing at the same
talking.
time.
Talking and playing, just talking. That man has a lot of stuff, you know. He can go.
Yeah, yeah.
He
He
can
kept
go.
it. He kept when I say he kept it real with me. He
Yeah.
kept it 1,000. Like it was, the first question he asked me was, um, "You love your wife? You die for her?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like when he asked me that I love her, I was like, yeah, I love her. And then he was like, "Would you die for her?" And then I was just like, "Would I die for her?" And then he was like, we'll talk when you're ready to answer that question or when you can answer that question. And it was like a whole thing. So like a shock to my system of like, wait, what?
Yeah.
You know? And so but yeah, your dad was just part of that whole era of my life of going into marriage and what it means to be a husband and stuff like that. And so I learned a lot. And so yeah, I have a long history with the Hansons. Like I said, it goes back to 2011 when I first started going to the church that we were part of. And yeah. So um as Adam matured and grew into a young man, and I started to see him operating in his gifts of taking pictures and being a creative, and me um wanting to start a YouTube channel and a podcast and all those things. um it was like a no-brainer to reach out to a person that can visually make sure that I'm doing it right. And so that's how me and Adam's relationship began to grow and mature into what it is today. And so
Hmm.
I think we talk at least a couple times a week. He's very an important part of what I do here at the Weird Perspective. And so um yeah, so we got a very, big brother, little brother relationship.
Strong bond.
Yeah, got a strong bond. So um so so your parents were in they were engaged. They weren't just like there. So my next question for you would be was did you notice, like, outside of the arguments, did you think like, man, there could be a real possibility of my parents getting a divorce before the divorce happened? Or when the divorce happened, was it a shock to your system? Like, wait, what? Divorce? What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It was for sure a shock. Like no signs of anything. And I mean absolutely zero. Like if there were, I didn't pick up on anything. I didn't know anything that happened. It was literally, I remember the exact day that I realized like this is over. And that
Mm,
day was actually on my 8th birthday, of
mm,
all days. my mom, we were eating cake downstairs. I was 8 turning 9 or already 8, just turned 8, I don't know. Anyways, one of those two. We were downstairs at my grandmother's house because my dad lives on the second floor and then my grandmother lives on the first floor. Um, and we were just, chilling, whatever. My mom comes downstairs like screaming, "Guys, get upstairs. You need to be upstairs right now," whatever. And then we were all just like, "What is going on?" Everybody was completely shocked. And then my
Wait, hold
aunt,
on. I'm sorry. Can you give me some context? So you say your dad lived upstairs and your mom lived downstairs, and your
my
grandmother lived down.
no, my dad and mom lived upstairs.
Okay.
When I say dad, it's because ever since I was 8, it's just been my dad upstairs, and then my
Oh, so
grandmother
he
lived
because he
downstairs.
continued to live upstairs
Yeah,
after the
after
divorce.
the divorce. Yeah, yeah.
Got you. Okay.
So it was dad and mom upstairs, and then my grandmother and my grandfather downstairs with my aunt. My aunt's always been with my grandparents.
Got you.
And so my mom comes in, she's like, "You guys got to be upstairs right now. Like, stop whatever you're doing, just go upstairs." And then my aunt comes running in. "What are you doing? These kids are eating this cake. Like, just chill out, whatever." And then my grandfather rushes in. My grandmother comes in trying to pull back my aunt, my grandfather. My dad comes down from, like, it was a whole fiasco, just an entire like thing. And that moment plays in my mind like frequently. Uh, I wouldn't say like every day, maybe once every few months or so, whenever I have this conversation with somebody, because people are always asking me about like the divorce and how it affected you and all this other stuff. So that was like the pinnacle moment, because when we went upstairs, my mom and dad were downstairs and there was cops involved and it was like the whole thing.
Wow.
And I was like, "Where are we going to sleep tonight?" Like that was the first thing that I said out loud when I realized something bad was something bad was happening.
Mm.
And yeah, that was it, man. That was the whole thing. Like I didn't realize that anything was going wrong until that moment.
Wow. Wow. So what why do you think you asked the question like where we're gonna sleep tonight? Did you think you were gonna get put out of the
I
apartment
don't know.
or
Well, so what happened was, I'm not saying that my dad's abusive. He's a very like spare the rod, spoil the child type of disciplinarian,
get that butt
so
toe up? No, I'm just
he would smack us. He if we would like curse or something, say, disrespect him, you want a crack on the mouth, and he sometimes he would, right across the face, just one, not he wouldn't beat us senseless. He would just
he
hit
wasn't
us
throwing
once.
hands. It wasn't like a 5-piece combo, nothing like
No,
that.
no, he wasn't hitting
Okay.
us with the 1 2 1 2,
Got you.
sting, move like a butterfly,
Your
sting
dad
like a
don't take
beaver
me
type.
as a whooper.
He doesn't to
He
me
comes off as
either.
like a straight talker, like I'm gonna talk y'all face off about
And you
what
know
y'all
what?
did.
As we grew up, that's what he started doing more was, "I'm not gonna whoop you, but we're gonna have a discussion right now." You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And it's kind of like that's what you need to do when you have kids. Like I'm assuming I don't have any kids, but
Mm.
like when they can't
Definitely there's an
reason,
age where you age out
yeah,
of whoopings.
exactly.
You shouldn't be throwing
Hmm.
fisticuffs with your 14, 15-year-old child. So yeah.
Right. And the point of me saying all this was because my mom and dad were downstairs, and my mom had taken a picture of my oldest brother's back, with like a handprint on it, and she was showing it to the police. I'm assuming that she was trying to be like, "Oh, well, he's abusive and he's this and he's that," but like that's also leaving out all of the difficulties that my brother would give my parents, because I don't want to put him out or nothing like that, but he's always had like anger issues and stuff like that. So it's like, he was hard to work with, and he's kind of always like been that way.
Mm.
Um, so you can kind of imagine like what a person has to do in order to like control a child who just doesn't seem to have any self control, you know. Um, and so that's yeah.
Mm. Got you. Got you.
Mhm.
Um, so you brought up like how the divorce would affect you. How did it affect you? And in that moment, do you remember not in that moment of that time of the divorce, but like weeks, days or weeks or even months after.
Mhm.
Thinking back now, how do you think it affect you? Did your behavior change? What did you feel like, man, I caused this? Did you feel lonely? Like, what was your um how did it affect you?
Yeah, I mean, which kid doesn't wrestle with, "Did I cause this?" You know? And for Pete's sake, it was on my birthday that they separated, right? So it's like, how can you as an 8-year-old kid not wrestle with that question every once in a while? Like, did I do something? Did I say something? Like, was it me? And I mean, I know now, like, it's not me, right? I didn't do anything. It was between my mom and my dad, and I had nothing to do with it. If
Yeah.
anything, my mom probably did it to help me because she thought, this man is abusive. My dad, not that he was, again, he didn't, but she did it for her own mental stability. She did it for us as well as kids to like protect us for what she thought was a danger. And Yeah, I mean, I definitely grew up lonely as a kid because the divorce didn't just separate my mom and my dad, it also separated us 4 kids from one another. We just
Yeah.
began to grow distant from one another. We're all in pain, and we're supposed to run to our parents when we're in pain, but our parents are dealing with their own things. Why should we go to somebody who's already broken? You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
not going to go to my oldest brother because he's obviously not taking it well. My younger sister, she probably doesn't understand the whole thing that's going on. I surely don't. So I'm not going to run to her. And then on top of that, like just outside of like the divorce and all of that, like my 2 older brothers were always like stronger, faster, smarter than me when we were younger. And then, as time grew on, like things began to change and
I'm sorry, I didn't
got
mean to
different
laugh, but you were like, we was younger. I wish they
when I was
would
young.
try that.
I mean, I'm taller than both of them. It's by like an inch, but I'm still taller than the both of them. And I don't know about stronger, I think we're all sort of like equal in terms of that. Like I've wrestled Anthony before, like to the ground, and I won. So it's like, uh he put up
the,
a
the,
fight. I'm not gonna,
no, the
but
younger kid, the younger sibling, usually he's either stronger, like smaller and stronger, or he's bigger.
I'm like low
I,
key strong, man. You're not
I
gonna
told
see it coming.
I told Dorian, I was like, hey, when like they're 6 years apart, him and
Hmm.
Dash. And I
Yeah.
was like, when he hits his growth spurt, I was like, I think Dash is gonna be bigger than Dorian. Because I think Dorian's gonna be more athletic,
Hmm.
just because he loves to run and play. And I think Dash will have some of that too. But I think Dash is because he's the youngest and he's kind of gonna be spoiled, just is
Hmm.
what it is. Um, I think that he's going to be bigger than Dorian and
Yeah.
stronger,
Hmm.
but I don't think he's going to be as athletic. But I
Really.
digress.
I
Yeah,
mean, shoot, he might, do lifting competitions, get real buff. You never know,
never know,
Uh,
never know.
yeah,
But I
you
just
never
find that
know.
that's just funny. The sibling,
We're
the
different now.
youngest and the middle and then the oldest, and yeah, it's a
Yeah,
pattern that I see
for
sometimes.
sure.
So that's
And
cool.
so the loneliness comes from the fact that like whenever I would want to play with them, they would be like, "No, you can't. Like we're gonna hurt you. You're too slow. Whatever. And then my sister, she was younger and the only girl, so it was like anytime that she felt or my parents felt like she needs to have more time with a female, with another woman, they would find like a friend that she has, an older woman that she can hang out with, something. She always had somebody around to like help her out or talk to her or whatever. Well, I wouldn't say always, but for the most part, like I would see that happen. She'd be, oh,
Yeah,
let's go to Aunt Sharon's house, go to Aunt Janet's house, something. Um, and then so like that just left me. That left me to my lonesome because I can't go to my brothers, I can't go to my sister. So I spent time to myself, watching movies by myself, playing games by myself. I would always
mm,
be like, "Hey, you guys want to go down?" My grandfather, growing up, I remember my grandfather, he used to fix games when he was fathering his kids, my dad and my aunt, and my uncle, for a living. Like that's what he would do, like arcade games. So we had a lot of arcade games downstairs growing up. And so I would always be like, "Hey guys, let's go downstairs, let's play video games." They'd be like, "Nah, man, let's not. I don't want to do that or whatever. Or I want to do this, that, and the other."
Mm.
So we all just did our own thing. And to this day, like I still find myself in that space of like loneliness quite frequently. Um, and then on top of all of that, like because mom and dad weren't together at all times, um, it was hard for me to like either reach out to my dad and be like, "Hey, dad, I'm going through this or that. Hey, mom, I'm going through this or that." So, like, you can imagine the kind of like self esteem that I had, which was barely any. And that was only kind of rectified up until like the past 5 years
Mm.
of my life. Like, I actually started feeling either better about myself or more comfortable in my skin than I already was, or whatever the case may be. And yeah, my dad talked to us, and he spoke wisdom into us on the weekends when we had him. But it was the matter of like, if I was talking to a girl, like I didn't he wasn't there enough to be like, "Oh yeah, this is what you got to do, this is what you got to do." So like I didn't know how to talk to girls or have that confidence with them either. So, it's just a
Yeah.
pattern of loneliness.
Yeah, man, I was thinking about this as I was gearing up to have this discussion with you.
Yeah.
And I even had talked to a couple of fathers that I knew, that I know that are divorced,
Mhm.
and asking them the questions of like, how did the relationship change? Because you're not in the home anymore. Like it's hard enough to connect with kids as they become teenagers and they're growing up and they have interests and they want to do all these things, and a lot of
Yeah.
those things involve them being like out of the house, or when they're in the house they're like alone, to their own devices, whether it's the
Right.
phone or it's the video game or some movies or whatever it is. It's hard to connect with kids as they get older, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's just natural because a lot of times too, as a parent, like our kids view us as um we're like their safe space,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
We're like their
Your
first
home.
like superhero. So it's not like it's almost like not a sense of urgency to like run to dad or run to mom.
Yeah.
Um and I'm starting to experience that a little bit now with my oldest daughter, right? Like
Mhm.
our daddy daughter dates, they don't hit the same like they used to. And she's a little bit more quiet now. And I'm just like, is there something we want to talk about? Did I do something wrong? Like I want us to always to be able to talk, but I think it's just part of her becoming a young woman. She's
Being
about to be
independent.
14 years old, and she's about to go into high school in the summer. I mean, in the fall, and so it's different. And so I'm just thinking of unique ways and new ways to be able to relate to her and be able to talk to her to get her to open up. Um, and so you said your siblings all went, um, like they kind of all did their own thing.
Yeah.
You guys never had a conversation about the divorce and how you guys feel about it?
We did years later, but like growing up, we never had that like
Mm.
discussion like, how do you feel about it? What do I feel about it? The ones that were the siblings that were emotional, it was like clear to them like they were taking it hard like even years later. I'm not going to say which ones, but like when they were like um acting out, you could tell. But we all acted out like in our own ways. I didn't even realize that I was acting out until years later. Up until like
Mm.
recently I realized like I did that because I was acting out. Like I would search for mother figures and father figures and people who had no part in being in my family, you know. And I did that because like I needed my mom, I needed my dad, and I just so the thing is like we had our mom from Saturday evening to Thursday morning, and then from Thursday afternoon to Saturday afternoon, we would have our dad, right? Friday and
Oh,
Saturday.
no, finish. I'll ask after you're done. Go ahead.
Friday and Saturday was my dad's day off. Sunday and Monday was my mom's day off, right? So if it was like during school, like it was just like whatever, we'll come home, we'll do it. But during the summer, it's like mom had to work a lot of the days that we were with her. Dad had to work a lot of the days that we weren't with him. But when we were with him, it was like it's only a few days. We can't like have that one-on-one conversation that we need to have, you know. And so I'm kind of missing my point here, but it's like to have that open line of communication with our parents. It was really hard to continue to do. And so yeah, that was my point. The fact is that I would go out and I would start seeking these people who are like, let me show you some attention. Let me try and help you out in your life because I know that you're struggling, and I know like your mom needs help and your dad needs help because they're busy working and they don't have time to pour into you spiritually, pour into you
Mm,
mentally. They had time to pour into us financially and physically. I'm going to be here in the house. I'm going to be
mm,
here giving you food, putting a roof over your head. But it's like sometimes I didn't need that. Sometimes I just needed mom. I just
yeah.
needed to hear what she felt about, you know, some situation that I was dealing with about high school or whatever. Sometimes I needed my dad to be like, to sit down with me and pour into me, which he did. Don't get me wrong. You know, like we spent a lot of time in church. Thursday evening was prayer. Friday evening was youth service. Saturday he would talk to us and he would do all sorts of things with us. But like, you know, it's just that's not enough when you're trying to raise a child. It's like
It's
literally a full-time job all day, every day. No
it's
days off.
hard balancing
Yeah.
4 kids, right? So me I got 5 kids,
I
and
got
I was really
15 of them
wrestling.
Johns.
17 of them jobs. Stupid. Um, as a I dealt with, like, I felt a lot of guilt because I
Mhm.
couldn't give all of my kids, like, when I was like, okay, when I'm home, I got them all, but how do I have time for them individually?
Yeah.
Because they all like different things. They're all going through different things.
Mhm.
They all need one-on-one attention, not just with me, but
Yeah.
with their mom as well. So if we're always all together as a family, how do I do that? And I
Right.
struggled, and I felt like a lot of guilt because I felt like, man, I'm not like connecting with them like one on one. Everything we do is always together.
Together, which isn't a bad
It's
thing, clearly, but
it's not a bad thing, right? It comes with the territory of having like a big family.
yeah.
So I talked to some of my mentors, um, and I was like, man, what did you do? I talked to this one father, and he said, he structured. Well, he gave. I don't know if he did it or he just gave me the idea to do it. But
Mhm.
because I have 5 kids, now I take all of them out uh, individually on their birthday of every month. So, for
Mhm.
example, Tamaya' birthday is on April 13th. So on the 13th of every month, that's me and her day.
Okay.
Orian's birthday is March 29th. So on the 29th of every month, that's me and his day.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just a way that I can be intentional with spending one-on-one time with them. And I'm not perfect, I'm not always consistent. They're busy season, things happen. So
Right.
sometimes a month I might go where, man, I couldn't spend time with them. But I mean, I'm in the home every day. So they see
Yeah.
me, right? They're on the other side of this room. And we have family time every Saturday and Sunday. Like, we prioritize family time.
Right.
And I really try to play with all of them just as much when we go
Individually.
out, right?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
Maya's into skating, so when she's out rollerblading, even though we're all together, I take 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes or whatever, and I'm with Maya, right?
Mhm.
And then Dorian loves to play basketball, and so I gotta spend time with him through getting some shots up, working on his game, whatever it is. And so, and each kid has their own thing. The Dash is just a baby. He's 3, so he's just running around, doing whatever. But it's real hard, man, to like balance
For
out that
sure.
time and just being intentional. So you got to come up with creative ways
Hmm.
to do that when you have a big family. And so, um, you know, I think, how long did your dad live upstairs from you guys during this time?
Live upstairs from us? What do you
After
mean?
the divorce, did he continue to live upstairs?
So we lived with him upstairs, and then my grandmother lived downstairs.
Okay. And did
And then my
you,
mom lived in another house completely separate. When she
uh,
divorced
okay.
him or was separated from him, she was gone.
She was
She,
gone. Okay.
yeah, just 2 floors.
And so you guys stayed with your dad.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
we stayed with him for a little bit, and then we started switching back and forth.
Right. Like you broke down with the
Yeah.
dates. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, yeah, and that could be a lot. And so how long after, I don't want to give out their business, but I'm just trying to paint the picture so I can know. How long after did your dad remarry?
Uh, I was, let's say I was 9 when they separated. They probably got divorced maybe a year later, so maybe about when I was 10 or so. And then my dad remarried when I was a sophomore in high school, if I'm not mistaken. I
Okay.
could be wrong, but let's just say that was like, I don't know, 15, 16 years old. So you can do the math, 8 years, right?
Okay.
7, 8 years.
So there was a good amount of time where he was like single.
Yeah,
You guys were living with him. And so,
right.
okay.
And when he found that woman, his wife right now, like he married that John straight away. Like he was like, no
Say
playing
it like
games.
that.
I'm old, bro. I'm not gonna
Well,
wait no longer.
usually older people, I ain't gonna say old people,
Yeah,
but older
I mean
people
older
usually
people
marry quick because they
quicker.
already
Yeah, yeah.
been through the drama. They know what they want, and so they're like, "Look, this is
And
what
this
I'm
wasn't
about. Are you with
his.
it? All right, well, let's do this."
That wasn't even his second marriage when he remarried. That's the one he's in right now is his third. So before my mom, he had a marriage before her. So he has
I forgot.
actually 4 older kids.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and so like going back to what I was talking about earlier, like how much mom and dad had to work. Like just imagine
Mm,
trying to pay not only 2 child supports, but then also having to worry about your own like well-being. That was my
right.
dad. And then my mom, she felt like she was kind of shafted because she's always said, "Oh, I never got that much money from the child support." But that's because my dad had to pay 2 child supports. So it's like
Right,
now
right.
she
They
feels
gonna
like
give a
she needs to.
percentage, and then that percentage is gonna get divided up amongst the.
Right. And so now she feels like she needs to overwork herself probably too.
Mm,
But that's just to give more detail and weight to whatever I was saying beforehand as well.
got you.
Yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. Before we get into this next part of your story, I want to share some of these stats um on divorce in America and just some of these stats. They're alarming stats. Anything that has to do with divorce for me is
Mhm.
alarming, right? And so some of these this is from it's a family website. And these are some stats from 2019. So these are some key stats on divorce here in America. Like I said, 2019 stats. Divorce rates in the U.S. it says are falling and hit a record low in 2019, with only 14.9 of every 1,000 marriages ending in divorce. Um, I'm not a math wizard, so you guys can do the math, but yeah,
14 point.
14.9 of every 1,000 marriages.
Isn't that 149?
Something like that. I know the divorce rate right now is like almost at 50% of marriages. I think it's at 49 point something of marriages end in divorce.
Yeah.
Or that might have been every for financial reasons because I was reading a
Mhm.
whole bunch of stats. So I might be mixing them up. So don't quote me, but you could just Google these things. But I'm just reading them here for context of because we're talking about this. It says there's a 16% increase in the risk of behavior problems in the child is between the ages of 7 and 14. years old when their parents divorce. So a 16% increase in behavior problems when the parents divorce and the child is between the ages of 7 and 14.
Okay.
Children of the divorced or separated parents are 1.5 to 2 times more likely to live in poverty and engage in risky sexual behaviors as they get older.
Mhm.
Estimates suggest children from divorced parents have an 8% lower uh, probability of completing high school, a 12% lower probability of college attendance, and an 11% lower probability of college completion.
Mhm.
Last one. And what is this? There is some research that suggests that children will adjust to divorce within 2 years of it occurring. Now, do any of these stats that I just read off like stand out and that you can relate to?
Uh, the college one for sure. I feel like if mom and dad were there together in the house, I was probably more likely to finish college.
Mm.
I did drop out after like 2 years or something like that. And the reason part of it was the fact that it's like the school was bad, but if mom and dad was there, I probably would have had like a clearer path. Like, we want you to go to this school, we want you to go to that school. You should think about this one.
Mm.
I did go to a college prep high school for 2 years and then transferred out to Lakeview. Nothing against Lakeview, but they don't really prep the kids to like apply for colleges at all. They prep,
Not when I was there. So I was went to Lakeview too. Shout outs to the
yeah.
Lakeview Wildcats. Um, so but you came like I don't know how many years later. I graduated in '07.
Yeah, I graduated 14, so literally 7 years later is when I
Um,
graduated.
but I think now they're a college, actually like a college prep high school now.
Now,
I know a teacher that works there. I work with her husband
oh,
who
okay,
works at Lakeview. So I think they're a college prep now, or they have like some college prep courses or something like that. So
yeah.
I think they worked on it, but we digress. Go ahead.
Um, and so I don't, and prob I think that the fact that I transferred from one school to another had something to do with me also not having the proper tools in order to apply for colleges. So I'm not going to put the entire weight of me not finishing college on my parents, or not even on my parents, but on their divorce. Um, but I know that it did have a factor in it because it all comes back down to like reassurance, self-esteem, self-confidence, and that's the exact things that I was lacking in my own life.
How engaged was your parents while you were in college? Like, did
While I
they?
was in college, they weren't very engaged at all. I mean, they were engaged, but it's not like they were like they would help me, but it was, I don't know. It was just like, I'm an adult. I'm gonna do whatever I'm gonna do as well.
Was
So it
the
wasn't
help like
like,
financial, or was it
no,
like a?
I've all the like loans I took out of my own name. They didn't like put a penny towards anything. I still have loans. Like, it's all like, not a single dime did they give me for loans or anything like that.
Okay. Um. Okay. Any of these other stats that like stood out? Did you start like, or you kind of mentioned that you did
The
have some behavior
behavioral,
issues.
yeah. And
Um.
it's kind of hard not to when you're a kid going through, when your parents are going through a divorce. Like, you're gonna act out in some way. I feel like that statistic should probably be higher,
hmm.
to be honest. But
Well, I
it
mean, this is
also
from
depends.
2019, so it probably is a little higher now.
And also, I guess, like you said, it was from the ages of 7 to 14.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you're getting closer to 14, I think you're less likely to act out because it's like you're independent at that point. You're less like, it's not that you don't care, but you're less like engaged with what is mom and dad doing. And I guess it also depends on like how close were the parents to begin with. There's a whole lot of other factors I feel like is that plays a factor in that statistic.
Yeah, I mean, dude, you gotta thinking about all these things in my head right now. You have to deal with the fact that now this kid is going from one house to
Mhm.
another house.
Yeah.
If the parent is like dating or they get remarried, now I'm dealing with this other adult that I might
Yeah.
not connect with, I might not like. So
Mhm.
there's like an attitude when I do have to go visit my mom or my dad. And man, I don't really rock with their new spouse. And, there's tension there. And then
I
as we
don't.
get older as teenagers, I mean, when we start, as my mom calls it, smelling ourselves, like we gonna say how we feel a lot of
Yeah.
times. And it might not, and it's not gonna come out in the most respectful way. So there's gonna be
Right.
tension and conflict, and so it might get to a point where you're just like, man, I don't want to go over there,
Mhm.
and then you don't go.
Yeah.
And then how does a person deal with that? I think for a lot of men, because usually the children go with the mom.
Mhm.
So when you see the dad get into a new relationship, and then if that other if she has kids, so you're taking care of the children that are in front of you. And it's
Mhm.
not that you don't love your kids, but somebody, it, it's a priority now.
Yeah.
How do you balance that out? So it's a lot of the stuff that we have to wrestle with as men. I'm not trying to make like excuses like, oh, this is why, but it's like the reality of the situation is that whatever parent, the husband or the wife, whatever, you're gonna have to learn how to balance. Do I prioritize? How do I prioritize my kids and these new kids that are now mine at the same time? I
Yeah.
personally don't believe in like, well, we got these stepchildren and then this and that, and like putting kids in those categories.
Mhm.
Like, God forbid me and my wife ever get divorced and then I remarry and that woman has children. I am going to embrace her children as my own.
Mm.
It's not going to be
Interesting.
that easy, but how do I balance spending time with my kids, my
Mhm.
biological kids that might not live with me, and then at the same time connecting with my new wife and her children, getting them to build up trust in me as I build up trust in them, and I live with them, so I see them more. I'm only seeing
Yeah.
my kids, you know, maybe over the weekends, because that's usually what tends to happen. You only see them on a certain amount of days, because of whatever the arrangements were. And if you don't live close and you got to work, and then so there's a lot of factors that go
Yeah.
into like, how do I balance this? Like, I want to be involved in my biological kid's life as much as possible,
Right.
but at the same time, like my new wife is here, she has children. I have to do for them just as much. I
Mhm.
can't like separate it. Like, well, my son, he has a basketball game. You got a basketball game, so which one do I go
Yeah.
see? So it's just like a lot of things. So I'm like thanking the Lord that I ain't gonna say never, but I pray that I never have to deal with that or be in that type of situation, because it'll be a very tough thing to have to deal with.
Yeah.
Um, and having to balance, like it's almost like balancing two households. Um, and I can see how fathers can get like burnt out, and then
Mhm.
the biological relationship tends to fade, and then the relationship with the kids. It all depends on ages as well.
It does.
So if the kids are like older, they're doing their own thing. It's like but when they're younger, um, yeah, it's can be rough. So they get attached to
Mhm.
you, you get attached to them. It's just like, man, these are my kids.
Yeah.
So um, yeah, that's pretty rough. Just processing and thinking about some of the things that your dad could have been going through or he could have been wrestling with.
And
Um,
that's something that I've been like reflecting on a lot as I'm getting older.
mhm,
Is like, how did like what drove my mom to want to separate from my dad? And just like going through her past and the things that she endured, and coming all the way up to when she met my dad, and then they had my brother, and then having all of us kids. Like it just, the more you like dig deep into the psychological effects of what she might have to had endured in order to get to that point, like you kind of almost can't blame her
Mm,
anymore, because it's like she didn't know what she was doing when she had us kids. She was only 18 when she had my oldest
mm,
brother. She stopped having kids at 25 when she had my youngest sister. So like there's no instruction booklet when it comes to having kids. There's no like,
true.
my dad had four older kids, so at that point I think he was just like, yeah, whatever, we're gonna have kids, it's cool, like I love kids.
Yeah.
So he was kind of relaxed about the whole situation, but this is her first kids,
Mm,
she's not going to have any more after this. She's done. I need to do this correct. And so, yeah, I mean, I kind of like stopped blaming, if I did blame either one of them, and just really realized like it's not their fault. They just did the best that they knew how to do at the time that they were in, because they couldn't see the future. They didn't know how it was going to affect us. And it's like you can't blame them. You really can't.
yeah.
Even though yes, they did do something and it was by their own uh free will that they did it. um it's like you go outside out of your own free will. You don't want to get dirty, but you do, and the consequences that you have to take a shower. It's not your fault that you got dirty, but you did go outside, and so there are consequences that need to be, paid because of that.
Mm.
And I think it's the same way with divorce.
How has your view of marriage changed, if it has? Like, did you when you thought about marriage from just say 14,
Mhm.
did you like, man, I ain't never getting married because you don't want to experience that? And if you did, how has changed and what has changed your perspective on marriage?
Yeah, dude, it was so the opposite to that. When I was 12, for some reason I had that inkling of like, I want to get married. Not only do I want to get married, but I want to do it right.
Mm,
I want to do it the way that God wants me to do it. And if he's spearheading the whole situation, like it's gonna have to come out right. Because I know that my mom and dad, they got together on bad pretenses, right? Uh, had sex out of wedlock, had a child. So it's like, where was the foundation with all of that? There was
mm,
none. And if you have a firm foundation, I mean, it clearly states in the Bible, build your house on the rock and not on the sand, type of a deal. Um, and so I was like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. And the youth group at the time had a podcast, and I would listen to their podcast because my dad was like, when you turn 13, that's when you can go to youth group, right?
mm,
Because it's kind of like PG-13. They talk about sex, whatever. But I was still curious about what they are talking about. And so there was this woman by the name of Marinez who was preaching about another woman's testimony that she heard. Um, and the woman, she stayed single for 7 years. I think it was like after high school or something like that. Didn't like kiss any guy, hold hands with any guy, didn't like do anything even remotely like sexual at all. And then on her seventh year of being single and having like this commitment with God, like after 7 years, you'll bring me my husband. Um, she went to I want to say it was a missions trip, and then that's where she met her husband, the guy that would be her husband, and they've been married
mm,
ever since. I was 13 hearing this, or 12 years old hearing this story, because then Marinez also did that exact same thing. She was a little bit older than the woman that she was talking about. But 7 years later, she also found the man of her dreams and then married him. So I'm like, man, if this happened for these two ladies and they've been married ever since, and to this day, by the way, they're still married to these men, I'm assuming. I know the first girl is. I don't know about Marinez. I'm hoping that she is, because that's just, it's a beautiful story.
mm,
I heard this and I'm like, I want that. That's what I want for my life. Because if my mom and dad didn't do it right, I want to break that cycle. I don't want to continue on going through this like system of divorce over and over again. It's got to stop somewhere, you know. And it's all about doing it the way, not that you want, but the way that God wants, because that's what will break the cycle. And so that's how and also just kind of like growing up in that state of loneliness, you always kind of fiend and desire that like closeness with somebody. Where life, one of my favorite pastors, his name is Judah Smith, and the one thing that he always says is that life is a group project. So like no matter what stage we're in life, no matter how many times I hear people say I hate people, like we need one another. We, in order
Yeah.
to go through life properly, we need to, pour into one another, take care of one another, help one another out. And even before I even knew those things or had heard those things, like subconsciously and instinctually, I wanted those things. And when I didn't feel like I was getting it from mom or dad, like I figured if I can't get it from them, I got to get it from somebody else, you know?
Mm.
So that, and so because of that, like I've always been like a hopeless romantic, I've always thought about like what it's going to be like if I get married. What will the, like, I don't know, I've always been in touch with my feminine side as well, so that has something to do with it also, I think. Yeah, so and to this day, like it's still how I view life, how I view marriage. Like it's something that pleases God and something that I want in my own life.
How much? Because how much does you think church
Hmm.
had such a positive effect? Because your situation was unique because your
Yeah.
family, your dad was in church, your
Hmm.
mom was in church, you
Hmm.
guys were in church, all of you guys at the same
We had to
church.
be, yeah.
Your mom and your dad being divorced at the same church.
Our
I just found
stepdad at
that
the time as well.
if stepdad at the time, it was just so interesting. And you guys were like, at least from how I viewed you guys, were like a healthy family. How much like Bible teaching and like practical things did your mom or your dad uh talk about in the house in the time that you guys were with them that helped you, or maybe even you studying on your own, or getting discipled from other people, helped you um keep that view of marriage?
Uh, when it came to my dad, it was easy because, as you know, like he was a marriage counselor, like you said. So when he started getting married, or when he got remarried, he was like all up in there. And even before then, he was like studying how to be a better husband, how to be a better father. And so he would always like watch these videos and like listen to a lot of sermons at home or whatever on his free time. And so I was always around that. When he would take me to school on Friday, it was always just me and him. For some reason, I don't even know how it like ended up just being me and him at the end of the day, or like taking me to school. But he would always put on Truth for Life, which is a radio station in Chicago, and Pastor Alistair Begg would come on the radio and he would say a little sermon or whatever, and so that like also fueled me. But I also did a lot of like research on my own. I was always hungry for the Word of God. Like I'm not a reader, so I would always listen to a lot of sermons. Truth comes by hearing, and hearing by the Word of God. So I've always been that kind of like had that desire to want to know more about it and want to like study it deeper.
Mm.
Um and so like I heard a lot about marriage from him. The church also was very like marriage focused. Like we got to heal marriages, we got to repair marriages.
Yeah.
So that was like, you know, even though someone who went through what I did probably should have hated marriage and hated the idea of marriage, like I guess there was always that hope of like that's not the pattern for every marriage. Like this is a one-off situation. It's not going to
Yeah.
happen to you. It doesn't have to happen to you if
Yeah.
you do things the right way. Um, so I just, it wasn't something that I looked at as like these are all marriages. They all suck.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good.
Hmm.
Like I said earlier, man, I wasn't just encouraged by your family and then because like you said, not everybody has the same outcome or even
Yeah.
embrace it. Like, man, some people like parents got divorced, they hate marriage, they don't want anything to do with marriage, they don't want to be married. I know people right now that's
Marriage is
dealing
a
with that.
scam. Yeah. My
And
best
they're just
friend, he was like, marriage is nothing but a piece of paper. Why should I get married?
mm. And so is he a believer?
He's not. And that's
Yeah.
like,
And so
yeah,
being a believer is definitely the
it does
foundation
help.
of how, when we read about what marriage is and how we
Yeah.
should honor marriage above all.
Hmm.
It hits different when you know that. And
Exactly.
then we've been around healthy marriages, we've been around some bad ones, and so
Hmm.
you get to see it from both perspectives. You get to see both things. Um, so as we wrap up, what advice would you give to a child um dealing with this right now? Like their parent just got a divorce, or they got divorced a little time ago. What advice would you give to them on how to deal with the thoughts that maybe they might be having?
Yeah. Uh, it's not even, I would say, to just the children, but also to the parents as well. And it's funny because I was actually thinking about this earlier when you told me like, "Oh, you're gonna be on the podcast and all this other stuff." I like to talk to myself and like rehearse things before I do things. So I'm like, because I knew that this question was probably gonna come, like, what you have to say to other people who are dealing with the same thing, and it reminds me of during my grandfather's wake. My dad brought his marriage groups or his marriage group, like his couples, to the wake. Um, and since my grandmother and my grandfather were married pretty much since they were like, I would say, I think my grandmother was probably like 23 or 24 or something like that, all the way until like she was 70, whatever, long time, 60, whatever years of marriage, 50, whatever years of marriage. He was like, I want you to give them one piece of advice. He would ask my grandmother to give each couple a piece of advice.
Mm,
And I was there for one of those pieces of advice to one of the couples. And I think I heard her in the background a couple of times too. And the one piece of advice was always uh, communicate with one another, just talk things through. Don't fight, don't raise your voice, just talk. And even now, I was talking to one of my friends earlier today, and she's going through some like situations with her relationship. And the one thing that I constantly see that fails is communication. Communication is our primary interaction with one another. And it just seems to be the fact that we are either always avoiding it, we don't know how to do it properly, we don't know how to work on communicating properly our feelings, our emotions, our desires for one another, our intentions, even. And we think that honesty has to be like brutal and like straightforward, but it doesn't always have to be. Like Jesus was great, 100% truth and 100% grace. He never said any truth without there also being grace or even hope. And so that's like, I think, my main uh what's encouragement or a piece of advice, like just have that line of communication, not only kids to parents but parents to kids. And it's not a matter of like, oh well, I'm not going to do it first, I'm going to let them do it first, I'm going to let them come to me. Like, no, you go to them, you be the bigger person. If you're the adult, be the adult. Like, don't wait for your kids to come to you. That's not how it's supposed to work, right? Um but when you do come to them, don't just drill it into the ground like, you need to talk to me. No, 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 no. You talk to them, take a step back, just be present. You know what I mean? And eventually they'll open up to you. It's kind of like when you were saying earlier how you try to like communicate with your oldest daughter. There's a YouTube channel called Therapist Reacts, and this therapist watches like movies and he breaks them down like kind of psychologically. Do you remember the movie Goodwill Hunting?
a very
very
Vaguely, but
vaguely.
the
Yeah.
name, the
So
name, I know the movie, but I haven't seen it in so long.
right. So Goodwill. Will Hunting, he's kind of like a troublemaker. He's a very smart guy. He was a grew up in like homes and stuff. He was homeless or not homeless, but what is the word? Uh, uh,
He grew up in like a orphanage.
yeah, he was an orphan.
Yeah.
Grew up in a lot of orphanages, sent place to place. So he like built up this wall towards like other people, and he got sent to jail a few times, and then the last time, this professor, like it's like a whole thing, but this professor took him out and he said, "You can work for me, but you also have to go to therapy twice a week." And so he would try and or they would try and put him in therapy, but he had that wall. He wouldn't allow anybody in, and so he would just try to make them see him as crazy so that he could just be bounced to a new therapist, right? Until finally he reaches one therapist who was played by Robin Williams. And in the first session they had, Robin Williams is like, going back and forth with him, and they were, you know, riffing or whatever. But then they kind of had like this little spat that caused Will Hunting to leave or be forced out. And you would think like, oh, he's not going to allow him back in, but he did. Then the following session, they just sat there in silence. They didn't say anything, and the reason why was because Will Hunting needed to talk first because he needed somebody to be there, right? And the therapist was like, "I'm going to be here for him, but he needs to know like that he's the one that needs to talk first, essentially, right?" So, and that's kind of like when you're approaching somebody who's dealing with something and they're hurting and they don't know exactly, they want to feel like somebody is there, right? And if
Yeah.
they don't feel like you're able to, if they don't feel comfortable enough, they're not going to say anything. But the longer you're there, eventually they're just going to start talking. And I feel that way about my own life. Like if I'm around somebody for long enough, if I don't know them, if I'm not sure of them, like the longer I'm with them, the more comfortable I'll be. And then also the more willing I am to open up to them and then start asking them questions or talking to them or whatever the case may be. And so if you're like an adult and you have a child who has, seeing you go through this divorce and it's hard for them to like open up to you, just be there. If you're a kid and you want to open up to your parents, but you just don't know how to, just be there. And the more you're there with your child, the more you're there with your parent, you're more likely to open up than you are if you were like, no, I don't want to talk to you right now, mom. I'm just going to leave. It's hard, it's uncomfortable, and it's difficult, but just do it. And things will change for the better. 100%.
Cool. Appreciate it, man. Um,
Long-winded answer. I apologize.
no, no, no. It was good. I want people to hear the different like perspective, and I like how you bounced it off of not just to the child, but also to the parent. To be alert and to be aware of what's going on with the child, and so I mean, yeah, relationships, man, it's a two-way street. It can
Yeah.
be difficult. People go through things and then they sometimes shut down, and it's like, how do I get them to open up and to be back to how they used to be? And it's like, man, it's like you said, like being present. And sometimes I know for me as a man, sometimes we go into like Mr. Fix It mode. We just want to
Yeah.
fix everything. Because sometimes our wives just want us to like shut up and just listen to me.
Just
You know what I'm
listen.
saying? Like,
Exactly.
I don't need you to fix nothing.
I just
Even
need you to
though
hear
it might
me.
be broken, I just want you to hear and just hear
Yeah.
me talk about it. Don't try to fix anything and just
Right.
so sometimes I had to ask, like, are you talking to me right now because you want me to fix it or you just want me to listen? I need to know so
Yeah.
I can, brace myself.
Hmm.
She's like, I just need you to listen. I'm like, okay.
That's a good strategy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, because sometimes my wife will firing off, and I'm like, you want me to fix it or you want me to just say here which one?
Yeah.
And then when she leaves, I'm like, I'm gonna fix it right now. But no,
I
that
always I always say that to err on the side of caution and just like when it comes to that, like, should I fix this or just listen? Always just listen. It never hurts to just listen. And then if they're like, "What do you think?" Then it's like, okay, now it's fix it mode. Now let's
Yeah.
dig into this.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've had those conversations where even as a man, I was just like, like
Mhm.
I just want to talk, or I just need you to listen right now. Don't say nothing. Don't respond. I don't need you to give me an answer.
Yeah.
Even though I'm gonna ask questions, I'm just firing off stuff. So yeah, man, it's good to communicate, learn how to communicate with every relationship that you're in.
Mhm.
Friendships, coworkers, spouses, whatever it is, learn how to communicate. And so,
Yeah.
man, Adam, I appreciate your time. Appreciate you coming out here doing this.
No
It's been a
problem,
long
brother.
time. We've been talking about this for a long time, but I was like,
Been a few
what
weeks
better
now.
way to bring on Adam
Yeah.
than just to have him do the wrap up episode of the off season?
Appreciate it. It's an
And
honor.
so you're probably going to be on the podcast with me and Ray. Shout out to Ray.
Shout out Ray
We just
one
don't know
time.
yet. You know what I'm saying?
It's all
But
right.
we got some heat topics coming for you guys. Adam does pictures. He's an
Yeah.
amazing photographer. He has done weddings. He's
I
done
won't do them though.
not no more.
No.
So he doesn't do
Yeah.
weddings anymore, but he has done them. Listen, just DM him. He just DM him.
Yeah.
But he's done personal photo shoots, different settings. He's
Portraits.
an amazing photographer. He also does a little bit of video editing. I don't know how comfortable he is, but if you need something edited and it's not like a big old movie,
I
hit
mean,
Adam
shoot,
up.
I'll do a whole movie.
I
The thing
mean,
is, I
he'll do a
went
whole
to
movie.
I went to college for filmmaking and video production, right? So that's what I wanted to do. But because the school was being dumb and their administration was just terrible, I decided to drop out and do my own stuff, right? So my passion has always been movies, but I guess photography was like, there was like an avenue to get back into movies in another way. You know what I mean? So
Right.
like they kind of blend with one another, but yeah. So you could follow me at TGH Photo on Instagram. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Just Instagram. So hit him up on Instagram, man. If y'all need some work done, some pictures taken, or a video edited, or even a
Graphic
movie
design.
made, graphic design. He
I do
does
his
a ton of
thumbnails.
things. So the little things that he do for me here, like the thumbnails, that's all Adam. Any pictures or videos that you guys are gonna see in the near future coming up very soon. That's
Mhm.
all Adam. He's a super talented dude, man. I love this guy right here. And so yeah, hit him up. Have him come and take some pictures of y'all, man. Support, support, support. And as you do that, make sure you guys like and subscribe to this channel.
Mhm.
I got like, I don't know how many friends on Facebook, maybe a couple hundred, maybe 300, 400. I don't know. But everybody on Facebook, y'all need to subscribe to the channel. Stop playing with my emotions. Um, yeah. And then we also have a With Perspective, I guess a fan group on Facebook
Mhm.
as well. Go and
A
like the
fan
fan group.
page.
What fan page. When I
Yeah.
send you guys a little invite, make sure y'all like it. I post pictures, episodes on that page. So yeah.
What about your
And then
Instagram?
I'm on Instagram now. Finally, after like years of not being on Instagram, I am still learning how to do things on Instagram. So bear with your boy. But go on Instagram and follow me on Instagram. You understand?
Yeah.
All right. So that's my rant. Again, thank you, Adam, for coming on to the channel. I appreciate you. Um, some other updates
Love you,
really
brother.
quick is that we have season 2 dropping soon. In the next couple days, episode 1 will be out on all streaming platforms, and we even have a video version. We switched some things up, so it's gonna look a little different. Me and Ray trying to do some new things. So be on the lookout for that in the next couple days. It's gonna drop. So again, like and subscribe to the channel, and turn your notification bell on so when it do drop, you can be the first person to watch it.
Yeah.
You can support your boy. We just trying to bring y'all some good content. Let me know in the comments below if y'all enjoyed this conversation, man. I don't think enough people talk about how divorce affects children.
For sure.
I think we think about the adults so much, and it's like, yo, children are suffering from your relationship falling apart and ending. And now we have to go to homes and new homes. I'm a product. I think my parents got divorced when I was 5 or 6, right? I don't ever remember them being married, which is wild to me as a kid. The only thing that I remember are pictures. I remember the apartment that we were in when I was a kid, but I don't remember any like moments or experiences that I had during that time when they were married. So but me and my dad's relationship is very rocky and very inconsistent, and so that's a whole nother podcast for a whole nother day. But for right now, Adam, thank you for your story. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being transparent and just open and honest about your experience, man, and how you've been dealing with all these things. And so
anytime, brother.
We're going to do this again real soon. We're going to figure it all out. But we about to get up out of here. My name is Derry. This is my guest, Adam Hansen. Make sure you guys follow him on Instagram. It's The Weird Perspective, the final episode of the off-season edition of this YouTube channel. And until next time, I see y'all on the other platform, season 2. I'm out of here. Peace.
Peace.